Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it is always a pleasure to bring the voices of Chatham-Kent-Leamington to this chamber, and I am pleased to add my support to Bill 222. I want to add some context. This issue has been around this chamber for some time, and I want to add my acknowledgement to the work put to this by my colleague, the member from Banff Airdrie, who did put forward a motion 110 previous parliaments, and certainly through previous governments that we have been pushing for this from this side of the table. And I want to acknowledge that that effort is paying off today, that we now find support around this chamber, compassionate support, to address the needs of those at some of their hardest points in life. I'm going to end up speaking personally, and so I will try and get there. But before I go there, Mr. Speaker, you might rule me out of order with this next statement. I know that I cannot refer to any other member by their last name, but I'm unsure whether I can refer to myself. So my last name, as all of you know, is Epp. And I'm not the first Epp that has graced this chamber floor. There have been other members of Epp. In fact, if you go across Canada, there are at least 7 different Epp families that are unrelated to each other. So the former Minister of Health under the Mulroney government, Jake Epp, was no relation to me or my wife. Now, why is that important? Well, Mr. Speaker, my wife, her maiden name was Epp. And so before any member in this chamber jumps to any conclusions, I want to state that all 6 fingers on both hands of all 4 of our daughters are beautiful. And why is that important? My wife and I, she was born in New Westminster, British Columbia, actually adopted, an adopted identical twin. Grew up in Calgary, went to elementary school in Calgary, went to high school in Rosthern, Saskatchewan, and then went to university in Winnipeg, where we met. And so she says that she must retire in Quebec, La Belle Province, and retire or die in Newfoundland as she works her way across this beautiful country. We met, married, and in 1988, we're anticipating our first child. And so we knew from early on in that pregnancy that there would be issues in that pregnancy. So we began the process of driving up what I now affectionately call the 401, up and down that 401, which I've traveled innumerable times in my various capacities over my professional career. But then it was as a young-to-be father, as she spent a lot of time in St. Joe's London Hospital, preparing for the birth of a challenged child. And we had actually anticipated that he would be born with insufficiently developed lungs. That was the diagnosis because of the scans revealed compressions in his chest, diaphragm or intestines in his chest actually, and that we anticipated undeveloped lungs. And so when he was born with 2 surgical teams waiting, the first thing he did was scream, which was not anticipated. And that gave us hope. And so he did undergo, he screamed, he lived, which I had been preparing myself for the entire term, or the second 2/3 of my wife's pregnancy, to lose him. The member from Burlington spoke of how people grieve differently. I actually did a lot of my grieving prior to my son Brenton's birth, to be there depending on the outcome. And actually, in the 37 years that have followed, my wife and I continue to grieve differently. I went back to work. We were in the middle of tomato season. He was born in 92-30 season. That's a Heinz variety that we were harvesting on August the 13th, 1988. He died in 62-03 season, September the 13th, lived 31 days. And so I have lived, as you can hear in my voice, lived experience with what this bill attempts to address. And so, yeah, he did undergo an emergency colostomy at 2 days old, survived. He then began to turn blue. Actually went through open heart surgery at 2 weeks old. And they grafted the left subclavian vein. So for those of us of the medical community, they grafted the vein around his aorta where the blockage was, and he survived. And I am still grateful to many friends that drove me up that Boro 1 to see my wife and child, every evening as I harvested during the daytime and then saw them at night. And there's only one night where I did not make that trip, because we were advised that we could bring him home in 2 days' time. And so I stayed at home and slept till 2 a.m. when I got that call. The call that was, "Come now." It was obviously a difficult night, and so we lost him that night. I said my wife was a twin. Her twin was flying from Alberta, and we picked her up at the airport that morning. She was coming for a dedication. She came for a funeral. And so we prepared for that, and I have still to this day am immensely thankful for the friends and family that support us. And so, how does this relate to government bureaucratic processes and compassion? The morning of his funeral, we received a call from a government agency that said we had to make a mistake in his birth certificate application. You see, we did not know how to fill out the baby's maiden name, mother's maiden name. We had filled it EP in EP, of course. And of course, obviously, we made a mistake. Well, they don't know how many EPs there are in Canada, as in there are many, many Smiths and many, many McDonalds, et cetera, from different heritage streams. But that was the call that we had. And so we worked our way through it that morning, the morning of his funeral, working through a government process, and no fault and no aspersions on the bureaucracy that made those calls. They were following through with their due diligence. But if there are ways that we can streamline our government processes, show compassion, show respect for taxpayer dollars, which is everything that this bill does, why don't we do that? And so I am very, very heartened by the support around this chamber. It has taken a while, but I am glad that the government and all the opposition parties are bringing their compassion to this chamber and are addressing these opportunities, that we can make life better for Canadians in their most heartfelt and difficult times. I have lived those times. And so I do want to say thank you. We have subsequently had 4 daughters. I mentioned them. They are beautiful. They do only have 5 fingers on each hand. My wife is adopted, but because of the last name, we did go through some processes before we had them, given the experience that we had with our son, Brent. And so sometimes people ask me, father of 4 daughters. Yes, you can see the color of my hair. But I am immensely proud, and my wife Charlene is as well, of their accomplishments. And so at times, I share this experience with many other families that ask, how many children do you have? And it depends how much time I have in this conversation is how I answer. Do I answer with 4 or 5? So today's the opportunity I have to acknowledge my son, because the circumstances of the day have afforded me the time and to bring his name to this chamber. It is an august responsibility that we have as members to speak. It's a privilege. I've had the chance to introduce my 2 granddaughters to this chamber. How many people in Canada get to do that? I want to give a shout out to the House of Commons orientation staff. I recall oriented 6 years ago, that they impressed upon us that we're going through that process of the unique opportunity we have as members to represent Canadians. Boys and girls today dream of becoming potentially NHL, or maybe now baseball players. But a truly Canadian dream is to become an NHL player, or WNHL. And as we walk the tunnel between the Welcome Centre and the temporary home of this chamber of the House of Commons, we see the plaques from the 1st to the 43rd. I've served in the 44th, and we are now in the 45th Parliament. And we see the names of all parliamentarians that have had the chance to serve. There are fewer of us that have the chance to speak in this chamber than there are people that have played professional hockey in our country's history. That's how special the opportunity that we have as parliamentarians to represent our fellow citizens. Cherish that. And when there are moments that we can come together, that we can join our voices to make life better for Canadians, let's be thankful for that opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
Mr. Speaker, I've always considered the honourable colleague opposite an excellent parliamentarian, but I now put him in the category of an outstanding human being. The courage that he's shown today on the floor of the House of Commons to share such a personal story and to relate it to a bill is something indescribable, Mr. Speaker. I don't think I've seen it in all my years, 10 years now, of serving as a member of Parliament, and truly I commend him for that. Mr. Speaker, we have an opportunity here, and we've seen it today, the spirit in the House. This is politics, and politics is naturally partisan, and that's not always a terrible thing. But sometimes it does prevent us from doing the work we need to as parliamentarians to benefit this country. And so I would point to this bill, a private member's bill that our colleague has put forward, a private member's bill that seems to have unanimous consent, to say the least, to go forward. This needs to go forward. I hope a royal recommendation is given, Mr. Speaker, because no less than 1,600 families a year are affected by the loss of a child. And the sponsor of the bill, in his initial speech on the subject, made clear that there's an elegant solution here, as he put it, because this would not require extra spending or anything like that. EI parental benefits and EI sickness benefits are almost equal. And so removing the bureaucracy from the process, ensuring that we have a compassionate approach that's put forward, I think that is absolutely vital. It's something that we can unite on here today. And it would, Mr. Speaker, it would make clear that we respect also the House of Commons process, because in 2019, the committee that's responsible for labour matters and benefits, the HUMA committee, spoke about the need to go in this direction. And so if we respect Parliament as we do, if we respect the House and its procedures as we do, we will give life to this particular, we will go forward with this particular change. Thank you very much to everyone who's spoken today. It's a day I won't forget, Mr. Speaker.